Hello and welcome to the Plant Pathology 892 Diagnostic Report videos. My name is Adam Striegel, and today I'll be helping us go through some of the common fungal root rot diseases that we sometimes have in both our agronomic and our horticultural crops. Here we have a plant that we got from a local greenhouse, and we're going to be looking to see if we can find some disease lesions on the roots, and then we'll be talking about using selective media in order to help determine which specific fungal disease is at fault. So the biggest problem with some of these root rot diseases is that the actual symptoms of the infection are not visible. You'll see general overall maybe some stunting and loss of vigor of the actual plant, but you don't see the actual symptomology. So the first thing you have to do is you have to unpot what you're working with, or dig up the crop in the field if you're working in an agronomic crop. And what you want to do is you want to look for some live roots. You're going to notice, especially with some of the ornamental crops that you have in pots, that you're going to have a lot of accumulation of moisture, especially at the bottom of the pot. It's probably being overwatered, and the roots that aren't alive aren't uptaking any of that moisture. So what you want to do is you're probably going to want to dig into the actual pot and look for some of the major roots, so we can look for disease lesion. And so what you're basically going to want to do is you're going to want to kind of rip that ball apart and find some nice amount of root tissue that you can use. And once you get some of that root tissue isolated, we're going to probably put it in a handy dandy cleaning. Isolated a lot of root tissue from our infected plant, so we've put it inside our mason jar. The next step is, depending on what you have at your disposal, you can use cheesecloth or you can use a nice wire mesh. You basically want to cap the material into that mason jar and make sure that it's nice and snug and won't be removed during the cleaning process. So once you have your root tissue in your mason jar and you've capped it off, you have to rinse it. Now you can use sterile water, distilled water, or you can just use tap water. It doesn't really matter. For our sake, we're going to use some nice warm tap water. And the cleaning process is just as simple as kind of filling the jar, shaking around the roots a little bit and letting it drain out, and beginning the wash process again. You'll repeat this until the root tissue you have to work with is nice and clean. So we've left the washing station, and now we're at the plating station. This is the first step in our selection process. So we've cleaned the roots, we've dried them off. Now we have to select roots that are nice and partially alive. If you pick roots that are partially dead or entirely dead, you're looking at secondary saprophytes coming in. So at this point, we've selected roots from our root material and cut them into nice sample sizes. Now when you want to do this, you want to make sure you get a nice mix of both partially dead and living tissue. What you want to do also is you want to maybe sterilize your utensils, which isn't always required depending on what selective media you're using. But basically you've selected your root material, then you have to plate them, put them into their auger. I like to do 4 or 5 samples per plate, so that way I get 4 or 5 chances at getting a nice successful colony rather than just 1 or 2. So at this point, we've waited a couple of days. This is a plate that I made with a fusarium media and some root material that I isolated from a clover species. What we're going to do is we're going to put it on the light microscope, and we're going to look for 2 main things. The first thing we're going to look for is whether or not the hyphae are septate. And then the second thing we're going to look for is whether or not the septate hyphae come off at acute or 90-degree angles when they branch. That is characteristic of what we would look for in a fusarium root rot.